Hello boys and girls, and welcome to another episode of L Double the Gamer. This is your boy L Double, and this time I got something special for you. I'm doing an updated review of the MSI Claw, the A1M original MSI Claw. Now this bad boy, everybody calls something a bad boy. Why is that? This guy has gotten a pretty bad rap when it first released back in March of 2024. Every reviewer, all the major reviews, and probably rightfully so, gave us scathing reviews about performance, battery life, XYZ. But now in late February 2025, there's been a whole bunch of updates, a whole bunch of things about drivers and stuff, software updates, everything to make this thing work a whole lot better. And is it better now? Is it worth your money now? Let's check it out and find out and see. Before we get started, I want to thank my sponsor. This video is sponsored by you, the viewers. That's right. I wish I did have a sponsor paying me to make these videos hand in hand. But you can support me, my great sponsors and viewers, by just giving me a like, a subscribe, make some comments. You know I love to reply to your comments. But with that being said, let's get into it. So as is custom for these L Double the Gamer videos, story time. I got a great deal on this MSI Claw. I bought this guy for $300 off Facebook Marketplace. So basically some guy didn't like it. He wanted to get rid of it, sold it to me. I actually recently upgraded my camera. You probably can't tell if you know the difference between my old videos and now, but I upgraded the camera and I sold that camera for $300 and then used that $300 to buy this MSI Claw. And it was definitely worth the money, man. I'm not saying you'll be able to get a smoking deal like that, but look online. If you can catch one of these for a good price, it's definitely worth it. Even before we can get into the review, it's worth it if you can get it for cheap. So my first impressions of it was the ergonomics and stuff of this are just great. The buttons are nice. The LEDs on the sticks and everything are pretty cool. The only thing that kind of bothered me is that the thumb pad is a little stiff. Don't love that. I guess I'll get used to it, but on a PC handheld, I'm probably not going to use the thumb pad all that often, so I should be able to get over that. I know there was some talk about the buttons. Some people kept talking about the shoulder buttons weren't all that good, like you had to press them a certain kind of way. I don't know if it's just the way you guys are holding the thing, but I never had a problem pressing these shoulder buttons at all. Some people say you had to hit them like sort of at the corner here, and you couldn't just hit them in the middle, but who does that? Your fingers are kind of laying on them, and for me anyway, my whole finger kind of lays on the shoulder buttons and presses them all at once. I didn't have a problem with it whatsoever, but some people certainly did. I would say the best number one thing about this, the speakers. The speakers are crazy good on this. Like you could probably like bump and listen to music on these speakers if that's what you wanted to do. You can actually feel the handheld vibrating when you're listening to music or playing a game loud on this. Now, the software, now you know how it is. It's a Windows device. Windows is definitely not made for a handheld. Windows is definitely not made for a handheld. The MSI Claw and all of these PC handhelds have some sort of software overlay, this one being M-Center as it's called. It basically kind of makes it more like a console-like experience, so you can kind of scroll through and kind of select your games. When I first got it, obviously it had to be updated. It's pretty clunky, MSI Claw Center I'm talking about. I don't really use it to launch games per se. It's more to check for updates and things of that nature, and maybe even turn on the AI stuff and then mess with your LEDs and get your LEDs lighted the way you want them to. I kind of just turned on the AI setting that's in there and let the AI set the speakers, the settings the way it wants to be, let the AI set the LEDs. I don't want to fiddle with all of that, and it's been working out pretty well for me. But this is pretty much a problem with all of these handhelds that run on Windows. Windows is just not made for this, so it's not even a specific knock on the MSI Claw. This is just for all Windows handhelds. Microsoft, if you're listening, you guys need to come out with your own custom Windows overlay or something like how Steam has big picture mode to help with this, because just fiddling around on Windows in a Windows handheld, it's just not the business. It's not the best way to go about it. But then conversely, the upside of using Windows is very versatile and flexible. So you can have all kinds of different software launchers. You can put all kinds of hacks on it. All these things are definitely an advantage of having a Windows device as opposed to, say, the Steam Deck that runs on Linux in the back end. The Steam Deck definitely is more user-friendly and makes using the console easier, but because of that you lose some of the flexibility that you have with Windows. So it's a double-edged sword depending on which one you're getting here. Now what you really want to know is how do the games play? Like, Does it play games pretty well? Is it comparable to some of the other handhelds? I gotta say, I don't know if it's comparable to some of the other handhelds, because I've only watched videos on those just like you. I do not own any of those. I did own a Steam Deck for a while, and on the Steam Deck, what I mostly did is play lower end games. So that's where you need to taper your expectations here. This is not going to replace a classic standalone PC tower with like a 3060 and up inside of it. It's just not going to do that. So most of the games, your AAA games especially, you're going to have to turn your graphic settings like all the way down, and you're only going to get about 30 FPS out of those. However, if you go to your medium type games, not your AAA, maybe AA games, some of your small indie games, a lot of those games you can get those to play in great quality at full 60 frames per second. I have quite a few games that I played on this. So I have Xbox Game Pass, which is, you know, great on here, of course, because Game Pass has free games once you pay for them. So is it really free? But you know what I mean. I have a game on here playing called Hi-Fi Rush. Hi-Fi Rush plays at a full 60 frames per second. And I think also too, it's on a list of games that are XeSS compatible. The XeSS is, I think, their version of DLSS for frame generation and virtualization for Intel, and it definitely helps. There's actually a website that gives you a big list of all the games that are XeSS compatible. If you find those, and most of those games are going to run really well. I also played your gotchas. I didn't put Star Rail on here. I'm sure you guys are like, oh, you know, you play Star Rail, but no, what I actually did put on here was Zenless Zone Zero ZZZ, and it plays pretty well. I had to turn the resolution down to 900p, but once I did that, I got it to run at a full 60 frames per second, and it plays and looks pretty great. When I put it at 1080p, it still looked good, but there was like a little bit of skipping, so or maybe frame dropping is what you would call it. So I went ahead and just turned the resolution down, and that fixed the problem for me. I'm also a big JRPG fan, so that's probably what I'll play on here mostly. So as of right now, I only have 2 JRPGs that I have installed in here, and one of those is Tales of Berseria, which is a game I swear I've been going to play for the longest, but that's an example of a low-end game that actually plays really well on here. And the other JRPG I have on here, if that's what you want to call it, it's more of a tactical RPG, is Diofield Chronicle. Diofield Chronicles plays really well, looks great, plays perfectly. I actually think that one is XeSS compatible, but I didn't know that when I installed it. And that's pretty much what I'm going to use this for. But the other thing is, and I've probably said this a few times on the channel, I have a really good gaming PC with a 3090 in it. So what I did was I installed Moonlight on the MSI Claw, and I installed Sunshine on my actual PC, and I can stream your more high-end games. So you'll see like my Star Rail game I love to play, I'll stream that from my main PC. I have Alan Wake streaming from here, Final Fantasy Rebirth. Those are all games that will probably not run quite as well on the Claw itself, but since I'm going to be at home playing this thing, because I'm not going to take it anywhere, it's going to stay in my house, I can stream from my PC, and then it'll look great and actually extend the battery life, since it's not actually running on the hardware, it's just mirroring from my gaming PC. And of course, the next question people are going to ask is the battery life. The battery life is trash, okay? Battery life is trash and all these things. When I say all these things, I mean all these PC handhelds. I would say the Steam Deck battery life was a little bit better because of the customization and the tweaking you can have. You can kind of do some things to adjust your battery life. But the power consumption on the MSI Claw is still especially bad compared to the others. There's not as much control over the wattage and the power consumption. So this thing just needs more power to run as well as does, as compared to, say, well, an RG Ally, a ROG Ally, whatever. As an Ally, the Ally X especially has a slightly bigger battery, so that one probably lasts a little bit longer. But what you can do on this is actually a battery configuration where it calibrates your battery for you. But I gotta tell you, I ran that thing. I think it took 3 hours to run this calibration through the software. It was ridiculous, and I don't know if it actually improved it, but it does have it on there if you think it maybe could tweak that in. I don't know if it really helped, but man, it had my system down for 3 hours. Didn't like that. MSI, nah man, you gotta do better. On the upside, when it comes to power, it has an extremely long, well, maybe not extremely, but a pretty long battery cord, a pretty long charging cord that comes with it, that I would say is probably about 6-7 feet long, and charges it pretty fast. It's 65 watt, so when you have it plugged in, you can actually run it better. There are a lot of little small tweaks to make your power consumption better. One of the things you want to do definitely inside the Intel settings is turn off the endurance mode, because I noticed that I would only ever get 30 frames or worse in games, and as soon as I plug it in, my FPS would double. So once I Googled it, like that's what we all do, I figured out you can turn off this endurance mode that actually helps the battery last longer, and it limits your frames though, and I want to get the maximum frames, so I turned that off, and then my gaming experience was a lot better. So in conclusion, we'll go over the pros and cons as normal, right? So let's start with the cons. The cons are the price. If you paid full price for this, yeah, I don't know about that. I think it was like $800 when it first came out. I think now since they came out with the new, I think it's the MSI Claw 8, that's slightly improved over this one. That one now is $800 or $900, has dropped down to about $450 to $500, depending on whether or not you got the i5 or i7 Ultra 5 or Ultra 7 version. Mine is, actually, I don't think I ever mentioned that. Mine is the Ultra 7 version with 512 gigabytes of hard drive space on it. And I think that was a pretty good deal for $300. So you might be able to catch somebody selling one secondhand for a lot cheaper. Now, maybe I got a good deal on it because all the reviews hadn't come out. Maybe after reviews like mine that are more updated, people talk about it's a little better. Maybe you'll get better pricing for it. Another con is, I mean, this is universal across all of them. Windows is not great on a handheld. If you know how to use a PC, we'll figure it out. But if you're not a pretty heavy PC user, which I think most people who will buy something like this would be, it's going to be a problem for you. If you don't already know how to navigate through Windows, it's not going to be obvious on a handheld how to do certain stuff. MSI Claw Center software is also not great, but it'll do the job. If you do want to use something that makes it more like a handheld, it makes it a little easier to launch your games, you can use it. It's not like the greatest thing ever, but it does work. Also, because this runs on an Intel chipset, there are some compatibility issues with some games. Some games they had to come out with a patch for them to launch. I remember when I first got it, I tried to launch Batman, Gotham Knight, whatever, on here from my Steam account, and it just straight up wouldn't launch. I think they have now given out an update that you can run a software program to fix that, but that's just an example of what I mean. Because of the, I guess, the platform is growing of Intel's graphics cards, you're going to have some compatibility issues, but over time they usually fix them. It's just an annoyance. The pros are, the performance is actually very comparable to some of the other ones. I would say it's better than a Steam Deck, right? But it may be not quite as good as one of the Lenovo options, or the Ally X is the main one everybody talks about. But it's just maybe a little worse, but it's usually still on par. I don't think it's really worth the full price. If you can catch one of the A1M, either the Ultra 5 or the Ultra 7 on sale, or used somewhere for $400 a year or less, it would be an absolute yes. Buy it, you will not regret it. That puts it around the same price as a Steam Deck or an OLED Steam Deck or something like that. I do think it is a good first PC handheld. If you've never had one before, this would be a good place to start, especially if you can get it super cheap, like I said. But if you have to go somewhere and pay full price for this, nah. Anyway, overall, I think it will be a good addition to my handheld collection of things that I like to play. I know one of the things I did not go over was compatibility as far as retro and emulators go. And I mean, it's a PC handheld. It'll play everything pretty much up to PS3, but I have other handhelds for that, so I didn't really even try to do that on here. I'm sure it will play them just fine, but I just didn't have a use for that because I have other retro handhelds for doing that, and the battery life on this isn't so great. So I can play something on like my Retro Pocket 2S for GameCube and have it be able to play it for hours and hours without having to charge. Whereas if I put that on here, you know, my system's probably going to last for about 2 hours playing something like that. So yes, it will do emulation, but because the battery life is not great, I would rather use one of the more dedicated handhelds for that. But you know, I really like the device and I'm glad I got it, especially at that cheap price, and I would recommend it. I know there's a lot of poo-pooing on it on the internet. All your favorite reviewers were telling you how terrible it is and MSI wasted their time, blah blah blah, but I think it was pretty good. And I mean, honestly, at the time they were probably right. At that full price of $800 and the fact that it didn't work very well, they were probably correct. But now you can get it cheap, and with all the updates and stuff, it's very capable. I would say I do recommend it. If you can get it for $400, definitely do it. With that being said, once again, thank you viewers for checking me out. L Double the Gamer. I'm out of here, boy.